Welcome to Dhamma on the Sidewalk, insights, interviews, and practical tips on the teachings of the Buddha for people of all walks of life, attuning, exploring, integrating the teachings in everyday life. Simple Dhamma for daily life. I'm Asoka, hosting Dhamma Capsule for people like you. I'm at a market, very popular organic market, and I just like to sit and observe people. And this inspired me to say a few words about food and why, following up on all the two previous episodes, why food is the thing that we move from, or that we give focus on to learn about the precepts. If food is pleasure, food is triggering the senses, the like, dislike, or neutral. And it also has a lot of deep root beliefs on which food is good and which food is not good, how it should look, how it should be cooked. So it is also said that to work in the kitchen of a monastery is to witness everything that can be a trigger for food, either on the side of the team preparing food, than on the side of people who come and taste the food and receive the food. Including monastics, they can have their own ways to certain food together and react to certain, and it takes training to actually accept that the food is devoid of self. So I'll share that chant that is chanted before having a meal in the Theravada tradition, but definitely in the Thai forest tradition. And I'll share that, and just to piggyback as well on what I was saying earlier on, why did the Buddha remove food from the evening? Not just because of contextual aspect. In India at this time, there were no fridges, and it was not good to keep food overnight, except for some items, for instance, ghee and oils. So that's why also fats are allowable items in the evening, but dairies not, unless cheeses, so fresh dairies no. And it's not just contextual that there were no fridges or it was just simplifying nomadic life. It also is that around food, it can have all sorts of conversation, battles, emotions, perceptions, and again, like, dislikes, and neutral aspect. And people can be very fighting, having arguments about food. People have really very strong beliefs of how food should be. So all of that is being removed. So it just simplifies again. And as I am looking at people eating, there also is said the mindful taking of food is a training of the mind. So not just eating whenever we want to eat, but also how we eat the food. How? Talking too much while eating, not chewing, not being aware of what's being put in the mouth, and things like that. So there's a lot that can be said around food. I'll read the prayer or the text. That's not really a prayer. I read the text that goes with taking the food.
This is a Theravada meal chant. Wisely reflecting, I take this food not for fun, not for pleasure, not for fattening, not for beautification, only for the maintenance and nourishment of the body, for keeping it healthy and helping it with the spiritual life. The food is made of mere elements devoid of self, just as the body is made of mere elements devoid of self. Japanese Soto Zen tradition. This is what is being chanted before taking a meal. Earth, water, fire, air, and space combine to make this food. Numberless beings gave their lives and labor that we may eat. May be we nourished that we may nourish life. There are other variations of these texts. In the Mahayana tradition, the emphasis is acknowledging the labor of others, those who have contributed to the production, the transportation, the packaging, the preparation, the storing, the selling, and everything of the food that is being presented to us, and also to keep some leftovers, like it could be just pieces of bread or pieces of rice, and give them to outside, to the animals outside. That's one practice. And there also is a practice of the Bodhisattva, includes acknowledging the wish everyone may get a meal today as much as we get one meal. And this is what I'm doing personally, is a blend of these 2 or 3 examples that I gave. I acknowledge that the food is made of mere element devoid of self, basically. It transforms. As soon as it's in my mouth, it transforms. And that my aspirations that everyone may get a meal today as much as I get a meal. So these are examples, the meal verses.
Musings on food. There is also the comfort food, the food that disrupts the system. There are all sorts of beliefs around food, and not just beliefs, but also the mind goes really around the food. And there is in the teachings, original teachings of the Buddha, something called the three perceptions, or the 3, we can call it feeling tones. Is like, dislike, and neutral. That's it. There's nothing really. It can be these. Everything is an in between these. You either like it, full like it, little like it. There's a total dislike. There's a dislike, and then there's a neutral. Everything is revolved around these 3 feeling tones, and then food is one of them. So how do we eat? Mindfully eating, being aware of what goes into the mouth, being aware of how we put things in the food, and also not to make noise. And this is something that makes a lot of people ponder about, like, in terms of discipline, why would that be? Isn't food such a very social moment? Yeah, sure. Food can be a social moment, but it doesn't have to be of a let go of everything else. And for instance, if you taking the one side of the scale, is that monastics are not supposed to make noise when they eat, so their spoon is not supposed to touch the bowl when they eat. So that requires mindful attention to how we pick up the food in the bowl and how we let go of the movement, and mindfully taking the food into the mouth, etc. Not making noise while eating. All of that is training of the mind. So also that doesn't mean to say that everyone who doesn't do that isn't mindful. It's just that it's a way of being careful of the mind's behavior, and it teaches a number of things to the mind, and that's where the purpose is. Now, think about for yourself how next time you eat something, try to see how you react to how the food is served, what comes to mind when you're cooking the food, what comes to mind on how you prepare the food, what comes to mind and how do you discuss food with other people. And families, for instance, can be a good breeding point for that kind of thoughts and thought-provoking aspect of how we react to food in general. Eventually, in a monastery, living in a monastery, we learn that having only one plate pass over a buffet. So we basically learn to mix all the food. So you start the buffet of food being offered. Usually it starts with rice and then meats and vegetables, and all of that gets full, and then the salads, nuts, whatever it is, sauces, and a dessert on top. And having only one plate, monks have one bowl, but having only one plate makes it that you end up with chocolate cake, for instance, on top of chicken curry. They might not touch, but they might touch. And the thing is, learning that it doesn't have to be beautiful. Eventually, it mixes up in the stomach. Doesn't really matter. Obviously, I wouldn't put chocolate cake into the soup. However, that's eventually what happens in the stomach. So there are some teachers, and one of them was Ajahn Chah, and others as well, that you mix up everything. There are stories. It doesn't happen anymore these days, but in the very early days, especially when they were very early days in the 60s, 70s, one of the Ajahn Chah's monastery was famous for that. When the food was collected from the alms round in the villages, it returns to the monastery, and everything would be mixed up together. The drinks, the food, the juices, the curries, everything, and you had to eat. So you have to be really super stoic, resilient, and visually, between brackets, visually impaired, I would say. So visually resilient as well, not to have to just be very hungry to actually take spoons of that food. But because monks, that's the only meal of the day, they were taking it. And it teaches a lot of things through the senses, the smell, the taste, the eyes, taste. It teaches everything. Without going to that extent, becoming aware of food and how we react to food is a great, great teachings for humans.
The following is an Anumodana chant chanted by monks of the Thai forest tradition before receiving food at the monastery.
Ichitang paritang tumangkipamewa samichato sabe paranto sangapa Chandra Vandaraso Yata Manicho Teraso Yata Chataro Dhamma Vadanti Yajna Maha